59 at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. We come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, 9 Pacific. For about an hour, we talk about guns, panel discussion. Coming up on episode number 700 here before too long. And got a couple people joining us tonight. We got a dog jumping in from Nevada. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
We got Woods joining in from Washington State. Thanks for jumping in.
Thanks for having me, G.
You bet. I'm down here in Tucson, so it's going to be West-centric. We should talk about things about the East Coast, mansplain how the East Coast is, or we should just talk about secrets of the West Coast because we're all out here. But tonight is Monday, so normally we would talk about behind the scenes. On Mondays, we have sort of a theme to each day of the week. Tuesdays, we talk about Second Amendment stuff. Wednesdays is entertainment, and Thursdays is training, and then Friday is the industry. The overall goal of the show over those 700 episodes has been to offer an alternative conversation to whatever is dictated by the established media, whatever agenda-based news of the day is trickled down with whatever intent or non-intent, but we have plenty of opportunity to hash through those kind of topics. So this is always an alternative to that. I think we tend to go towards the nerdy rather than the frivolous most of the time. And every once in a while we get a group of people in and have an excellent discussion. Well, for the last while now, we've been kind of been a random panel discussion. Whoever wants to jump in from the gun channel side gets a link, and that way the group is always different and the conversation follows. So anybody who's watching this now or in the future who's interested in jumping in, let us know on the gun channel side, and we can send out links. Right now we're using YouTube to provide the room for the live conversation, but they are quickly going to become one of only many options. And of course, we're going to jump to a more Second Amendment, a more gun, a more freedom-friendly option, and looking forward to those coming down. Hopefully we'll see those sooner than later. Anyhow, just trying to explain the show a little bit. I know it's a little bit redundant, but I'm not sure when people are listening to this show for the first time. I need to do some sort of recorded synopsis or little recorded blurbs and play like, one on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, and cover some of this stuff more concisely. Anyhow, so on Mondays, like I say, we looking at the themes of the week, we go behind the scenes, and we usually talk about the nuts and bolts, how to run a project online, how to support, how to use social media. And I'm going to briefly talk about that, and then we can potentially schedule out some of these shows going forward. I like to schedule these shows out ideally once a month so that, I can spend a day or so getting this show figured out, and then this being one of my many projects, kind of let this thing just happen each night. Once it's scheduled out, there's very little else to do on the pre-show side. So one day I guess we could talk about what all there is involved in putting together a show like this and trying to get it out there. But we'll talk about scheduling it, we'll talk about topics, like just kind of went through our daily themes, and we'll fill up some of the upcoming shows. But I'll take a break here and let you guys chime in, and then I'll, like I say, talk quickly about one of the projects we got coming up. But I guess we didn't really break at the beginning. What we used to do at the beginning of the show is break and see if anything happened overnight or over the weekend that was worth talking about, or if you guys just want to start chatting about something, I'll take a break from talking here.
Well, I mean, I think Woods, you said you have a list of stuff for topics. If you want to jump into the planning segment.
It sounds good to me if it's okay with it's okay with G.
No, I got a thing to do first before we start digging into that.
Okay. Oh, I have a PSA for you. If you do a trial of any kind or find yourself shooting at a range, always triple check that you got all of your magazines, because it really sucks coming home and realizing that you left one behind somewhere in the desert.
So you left gifts for other people?
Yep.
So do you guys mark your magazines?
We do, but I don't know if one of the guys that was at the trial got it or if one of the brass collectors picked it up, because when I went back, it wasn't there.
Well, that'll happen, but I like to mark my mags so that they're mine, right? So that's, some people will put a separate mark. I just kind of let that happen with my numbering, because my numbering is different than other people's for sure. But then I number my mags. So if I get 5 new mags, they all get a number, so I can kind of keep track. I'm not as into it as some people, where they'll keep like a spiral notebook or even a log book or something, a more formal log book, and keep track of each round count in each mag, so that they can monitor when it's time to swap out the spring. What do you want to switch a spring? What, 8 to 10,000 rounds or something? Again, it depends on the person. I don't know. Some people, I guess it depends on the magazine too, what kind of gun it is. But anyway, the spring is a perishable part, so you want to keep that thing working. Anyway, some people keep track of that, and then of course just general working ability of the mag. So once the mag gets trashed, a follower might get changed or something, but usually it'll go into my training pile, and then my good ones stay for real work. And then but like I say, I don't really keep it on a spiral notebook or nothing, but I'll take note if I'm out shooting and one mag is glitching on me, then that mag gets taken out of the rotation and gets used for more stuff where I don't care if a mag gets hurt.
Yeah.
But anyway, so if you mark them, then you got the potential somebody goes, oh, I found a mag out in the desert. You can say, hey, does it have like a 5 and a 1 on it, or is got a little triangle? I do mine with like little shapes and stuff, so it's just a little easier to figure out mine from somebody else, so that just using like nail polish and a number 4. Anyway, you can describe it. Does it have paint marker on it? Is it orange paint marker? And then somebody can go, oh yeah, I'll leave it here for you.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was my fault. I thought I had picked them all up when we finished running, and apparently I didn't pick them all up. So just always remember, even if you think you double check, doesn't hurt to triple check to make sure you picked up all your mags.
Right on. Well, so I'm gonna be doing a series. I was watching Clover do some whiteboard stuff, and I used to do some whiteboard stuff, and it's pretty efficient for some things. So I'm gonna do a couple of quick. I've done these before, but some quick. I don't want to call them tutorials. I'm gonna call them more like primers, to give you some idea of the theory, and then some step by step, and then some detailed into some of those steps, some details of those steps, in order to build a sort of guide or how-to, a DIY for people that are interested in creating content. I still get questions, and I don't get that many questions because I don't post videos that are talking about guns or anything, where people bug me about what grips I'm using or what sights I changed out or anything like that kind of questions. But I'll get questions on how do you guys go live, or how do you start up this, or how do you monitor this, multiple platforms, things like that. So in order to answer those questions specifically for people that are already kind of in the midst of it, but also I want to encourage people that are watching that aren't participating. Not that we don't have enough people participating, but it's so simple, and it's there's lots of good reasons for it. So I just want to make the barrier to entry small as possible. Since if you're watching this on any platform, you've already created an account somewhere, whether it be on Gunstreamer, on guntube.org, or one of the other older platforms that suck and hate guns. You've created a username, and you've created an account. You understand the basics. All the other platforms are essentially the same. So without getting into minute details about each platform, I'm going to just put together some like bullet points on each platform for just the basics. Like Instagram is photographs, Twitter is quick messages to in text mostly. Facebook is more of a community. YouTube is video. Just the basics like that for people again that might really have not a lot of concept about what's going on here, to give them some waypoints, to kind of know what the playing field is, and then get them a little more comfortable on some of the platforms. They know what's out there and what they can give them some direction perhaps. And I think we all would do better having people know these tools, so that we're not at the mercy of a bunch of kids that are super savvy with this stuff. And, of course, being kids at the mercy of the influence out there, the influencers. So in order to have people who have good heads on their shoulders be part of the community influencers, I think it's beneficial to have as many people as possible understand these tools. So I'm going to be doing some workshops on that. And the goal is to do some primers, like I say, to just kind of describe more, I guess, hopefully concisely, but also with some images and some separate videos, so that they can become archived over on Minuteman University and on Gunstreamer in a playlist and that kind of thing. But to have them there so that people can watch them in order, or have them there when needed. But then also follow up with workshops, so that if there are questions or people have points or something that aren't covered in the primers, to get into it, and then of course record those so that people can then, if they really get into this stuff, can watch real people talking about it and having real conversations and hearing questions that they might not have asked. And again, hopefully that works to get more people active with this stuff. And you don't need to be the next Hickok. You don't even need to be the next, I don't know, Gary Gizzard, but you might want to, again, be less intimidated by these devices that we carry around every day, be a little bit more fluent. I went to a place called Penguin Tactical, just south of the Browning Museum in Ogden, Utah. We were coming back down towards Salt Lake City with Dead Horse, and we stopped by this place called Penguin Tactical, but Dead Horse hadn't been there yet. It was literally right off the road we were on. So we pulled over and checked it out, and they do Cerakoting mostly, and sold some guns, but mostly modifications and I imagine some sort of engravings and things like that, but mostly modifications to guns. There was this old guy, I posted it on Instagram, old guy holding a shotgun or picking up his shotgun that they had painted, and had like a Texas flag on it, and kind of a World War, or kind of a Vietnam paint job on this old trench gun. And it was cool as hell. And the guy was like, this is an old guy, a Vietnam vet. And he's like, hey, let me show you some pictures of their AR-15 they did for me, or one of the AR-15s they did for me, I think he said. And he proceeds to pull out his cell phone and just start whipping through pictures in his gallery. And I was like, sir, I applaud you. You're an old ass guy. I didn't say it like that, but you're an old ass guy. You're just whipping through this phone like it's your bitch. I know 30-year-old people that can't do that, or are intimidated by that. So that was pretty inspiring. So if I can get some other people out there to be a little bit less intimidated with their devices and the platforms that are out there, I think we all gain, right? So people that are interested, I know there's people out there that are watching right now that are interested in helping people out like that. Once we've got these primers made and we get the workshop scheduled, if you know people that are kind of, could use that kind of stuff, definitely let them know that these workshops are going to be out there, so they can participate, or at least ask you questions that you can bring to us. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say is sort of the Monday topic, and now we can get into future topics, I guess.
Cool. Mr. Woods, do you want to kick it?
All right. So I know that G-Webs has been talking a lot about, like, we should be making a push towards getting rid of the NFA. So, like, what would our first step be?
I like that. That's a good topic. Have like an open battle plan.
Yeah, like where do we go after first? Or, how do we get that rolling? What's our and anything that's big like that, we've got to chunk it into smaller pieces. What's the first piece?
Yeah. No, that would be that's a nice big topic.
And then the next one that I had was, I know G-Webs and Smeggy and I, during the summer when I first joined, we were kind of working on a better 2A argument to the non-gunners, not the anti-gunners, because you're never going to convince them. But I would say the majority of people, at least that I know, that are fairly left, aren't against guns. They just don't care one way or the other. And so when you're making those arguments, you know, when you're having that discussion and not a debate, how to really work that out. And then Schmege came up with a great idea of making some kind of playbook. So if they say this, then you can say that back. And then we also talked about a card that we could make where after you have that discussion, you could hand them a card and say, well, you made some really good arguments. I really appreciate the discussion, but you know, maybe you want to look up some of this information here. And then kind of rolling on that. You want me to keep going?
No, you're only allowed to offer 2 suggestions.
Okay.
But I guess since there's nobody else here, we'll take a third.
Yeah, go for it, brother.
Okay. So another one is, so there's all these billionaires that are anti-gun. Is there a pro-gun billionaire? And why not?
I think there is. I can't think of his name, but I think I remember hearing about that just recently because that's been a question before, but that's a good one.
And then
Not enough of them, because there's a lot of billionaires.
Yeah, and like, you know, how do we get them to maybe, you know, help us even more? Maybe they don't know about, you know, some of the ideas that, you know, we're trying to get going. Another one is, I know one that I'm interested in is like getting an FFL or like what are the pros and cons? I know we have Gun Channel members that are, and I know some of us would be kind of interested in that. And then one that was left over from the other day is 40 cal dead. And then I know for myself, a lot of when I was younger, I had to go with used guns. So something about used guns, pros and cons, like how to select them. I know there's a ton of those out there, but that was an idea.
Never a bad thing to retouch.
And those are the ones I have off the top of my head here.
All right.
Oh, I thought you had them written down. You don't have them written down?
I did have them written down right here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you copy and paste them to me, so I'll have to write them down.
Okay.
You know, those are all great introductory to, especially buying the used gun. And I liked all the stuff you mentioned there about how to get movement going. You know, in terms of some gear topics to coincide with, like, is 40 dead? Whether or not to shoot with gloves, and if so, what do you buy specific shooting gloves, or do you know, pick up stuff from the hardware store? Pros and cons of that, I guess. And then, you know, what do you carry when you can't carry a gun? I think that's a topic that gets talked about a lot more often, probably with women than with men, but it's something that everybody should take into consideration.
Or people that work at a school.
Yeah, you know, what alternatives do you have within your limitations? Oh, and in the house hearing protection. That's the 3 that come off the top of my head, G.
Right on. I am trying to do too much stuff at one time here. There's a lot. It's been a while since I updated this thing that I'm trying to write stuff on.
All right, no problems.
We're seeing that I don't see anything coming in from the Gun Channel side. There's a couple of green dots over there, people that are active. Got some people on the YouTube side, and they're talking about 1022 pistols, but nothing about topics besides that.
All right. Well, that's nice of them to have their own separate conversation, I suppose.
Oh, awesome. You're writing down his too. Thanks.
Thanks, Pinewoods. You're saving me the trouble of typing it. Yeah, I mean, so those are, like I said, those are the topics that come to my mind right away. But I definitely like the fact that you get about what he was talking about with how setting up an open platform plan to get rid of the The NFA, I like that a lot.
I'm hoping that one's important too, because I'm trying to not do the same things over and over again. That doesn't accomplish anything. And, I'm not looking to create engines for revenue or, just to get people riled up for nothing. Our goal is to change, right? Is to move forward, have a future where the NFA is gone and our future generations don't have to make that fight anymore. They can deal with whatever comes on down the road. So, efforting to get more people involved in, again, like I was talking about at the beginning with the whole 2A workshops and stuff. After going to the Gun Rights Policy Conference and seeing people that have accomplished great things with different levels of technical experience and expertise and knowledge and ambition, and the awareness that it takes, the awareness that you don't need to change everybody's mind. You don't need to educate everyone. You don't need to tell, everyone doesn't need to be doing the same thing. But when we have so many people involved in the issue like we do, we have so many resources within that population of people, different skill sets and knowledge and everything, then if we were to work together and amplify each other's messages and efforts, we got some real potential. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So having something that project or a discussion that gets us towards a unified call to action, I think is pretty cool. It would be, it's getting everybody together is one thing, getting the concept of everybody getting together at a periodic time to get together is one thing, but then additionally giving them some direction and something to start with, that's more, it's better.
Yeah.
I know I'd really appreciate the thing you were talking about where there'd be the workshops to help somebody like myself that I've been at my gun channel since the summer, but I haven't really created any content or anything. And I kind of always wanted to, but it's a little, I'll be honest, like you were saying, it's a little intimidating for me. I know that the machines are for 14-year-old girls, but me and electrons have never gotten along. But, if I felt like I, had some guidance on it, I think I could do a lot better job. And I'm certainly not alone.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, and it's just a matter of first half being people interested in it, and everybody's going to be interested at some point and not interested at others. But it's just that if there was something there that when you're interested or when you need it, you can gain that skill. It's like riding a bike or something. You don't have to be interested in bikes your whole life to know how to ride a bike, and for the rest of the time you can ride a bike. Might take you a minute to get back on the path, but you're going to figure out how to ride a bike right away again. So if we can get people past that hurdle of, the internet's for them, or the internet's for other people, or the internet's to whatever, get past that. Then when it's like, oh, I want to share this, or I need to do this, it's just click, 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 and it's on Instagram. Not, oh, I need to call my nephew, or I need to go online and see if so-and-so has a minute to help me do this. That's what I just want to see that barrier gone.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's a matter of hopefully doing some workshops and getting enough people together that there's, some questions, and that it's not just a lecture, because nobody wants to watch a lecture after the fact. At least I wouldn't. So I imagine too many people are just interested in yet another lecture out there on how to use it. And besides, if we're talking about 2A specifically, just anybody can go watch a lecture on how to use Instagram. We're talking about, the nuance of, with a photograph about a firearm, for example, you can't put anything in the description, that might have anything to do with prices or sales or anything like that, where, just a plain old lecture on how to use Instagram probably isn't going to discuss anything like that.
Definitely. Yeah, man, that what you just said there about like the Instagram and everything, that actually is another potential topic to talk about, is whether or not people are presenting the Second Amendment responsibly when they use social media. For example, we have incidents all the time of people doing what I think most of us would agree are dumb, lack of common sense things, And it's up to the rest of us who want to present the Second Amendment in a positive way to do that effectively. So that way we can't be misconstrued.
Amen. We got to get rid of the word libetard and things like that. We got to get rid of it. It doesn't help us.
I think you guys are talking about two different things, but they both have their validity. Well, the thing is, you can't stop people from being yahoos. What you can do is, well, at least from my opinion, you can quit worrying about the low-hanging fruit. So where do you draw that line with gangsters being weird? They were just talking about that. Was it today or yesterday? The gangsters playing some game where they point a gun at each other and yell something, and I don't think they shoot each other, but they point guns at each other, and that's obviously weird. So, does that represent gun owners? Most of us are going to say no, but if you're not the gun owner, you're that person in the rest of the country that just stands around not caring about guns, I guess, and they're looking from 21 feet away. I don't know. What do they think gun owners are? It's somebody with a gun in their hand. So, they're going to consider that a gun owner. So do we need to be concerned? We're certainly never going to get to that gangster and say, hey, there's 5 rules or 4 rules or 3 rules of gun handling, right? So anyway, I'm just saying that if we don't worry about it, if we just acknowledge that there's going to be yahoos and that we don't have to be responsible for every yahoo just because there's yahoos, I don't know. But again, at the same time, you don't want to just go like, do what you're going to do.
Well, that's my point. When you were talking about knowing how to use the platforms like Instagram and stuff, that's what I mean by that. Because you're right. When we're never going to get rid of yahoos being yahoos, but we can't complain if the yahoos are the only ones putting a message out there. That's all I would
brilliant. Yeah, exactly. And that's another strategy, right? Is to just shadow them, just to dwarf them, I guess, whatever the word is, with good content. And that, I don't know if I've ever said it that way, but that's the perfect way of saying it. Like if we had 99% great content, then yeah, there's going to be yahoos, but they're going to be muffled. No one's going to ever see them. They're going to have to search them out where there's going to be so much other valid content, which is really what it is right now. There's a lot of good, solid 2A content out there. Safe and responsible and all that.
Yep. I like what you have out there, Woods, about the traveling with guns. That's almost something that I'd like to see if we like incorporate that into when you have people to talk about their states. Mm-hmm. Make it
and then nobody knows more about it than G. He's traveled all over the place. Like I wouldn't know. Like I know that I can't go to Oregon with my concealed weapon permit because they don't have reciprocity, but I can go to Idaho. But beyond that, I have no idea.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons, one of the things I'm hoping to be able to do, one of the reasons I take some pictures and stuff that I do is, even when we started back in 12, driving around from state to state, one of the concepts or one of the goals would be to talk about the reciprocity in each state, do a video about that reciprocity and what the differences are. But time is, it's only 24 hours in a day. But traveling with guns is something that we've talked about quite a bit. 700 episodes. That's something we've done multiple times, whether it be flying or driving, because it's definitely different. But thing is, I sort of cheat, except for Illinois, which is right in the dang middle, and it's up and down. It's sort of like a big anti-gun barrier in the middle of the country. But most of the time I travel with firearms, it's in gun-friendly states, and my CCWs get me into, I have reciprocity basically with every good gun-friendly state, minus the 9 jerks. So, or maybe it's more than 14 or something. I think it's whatever, but it's quite a few of the states that I travel in, it's no issue. The one thing I do have to deal with, or I've had to deal with, is whether or not there's a duty to inform. So, or a duty to declare. So that's an issue, I guess. But I don't get pulled over, so it hasn't been an issue. But yeah, that is something that I think is worth chatting about. And then, of course, flying or just getting into the nuance of it, safes or lock boxes, different methods of carry if you're going to be going from a museum to a hotel might be different than going to a training class or something.
Understanding what the airport can ask you to do versus what they can't ask you to do.
Right. They know it. We've talked about, the different airports are more familiar and less familiar. So knowing where you're flying and that kind of thing. Like when we travel from Tucson to Salt Lake City, it was effortless. They both are really comfortable with guns. It's no big deal. Tucson to Vegas, nothing, right? They're both real comfortable with guns. Start going east, though, and you get into airports where they're not so familiar with guns. Sometimes, not always. But anyway, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff there. And I don't know, at some point, one of the things I'll put a call out here for in a minute is some help. But my interest isn't in just having a show that goes on and on forever, or projects that go on and on forever. I do want them to grow and expand and get more better. So, we want to have, I guess I'm getting at is I'd like to have interviews with some of the gun shops. I visited at least hundreds of gun shops at this point. Maybe not hundreds, but at least 100 gun shops, at least more. So there should be enough gun shops in there to have some of them on as guests and talk about their shops and the locations and the customers and the history of these shops. And that'll take some segments from the show. But as we bring some of these people on, some of them will be experts, and we can bring some of these topics up. I guess what I was getting at is we can bring up some of these topics that we've hit multiple times already ourselves in our other versions of the show, but bring some new spin to it. See, it might be neat if we're going to have some guests on to have a set of 10 questions and show those questions to them and say, these are the 10 questions we ask everybody. If you would pick 2 of them that we'll talk about, and then it's just neat. I think we've done that project before. We've done that concept. I think we've done that concept before where we ask the same question to a lot of people, and then when you put all their answers together, it's interesting to see the different ways they interpret the question and answer it. All right, let me else has to go. I got to drink something.
All right. So, yeah, I agree. I think that would be great, especially if you're able to actually have real gun shop owners doing interviews. I think that'd be awesome. I've never, gun shop. It's funny. Gun shop owners are a lot of times portrayed as being kind of quiet, but I think that it'd be great to get some of them letting them know they're in a friendly environment where they could open up and talk about the business. I always find that you get the most interesting stories from people who work in gun shops.
So I have a kind of a stupid question. Is that like you go interview them, or they jump into a chat like this?
A chat or the phone, more than likely. I doubt many of them are going to be savvy with Hangouts. I'm sure some of them will, but thinking phone or whatever's easiest for them, but just to have some sort of an audio interview.
Okay, so my follow-up question, is there a way that we can make like a guest hangout persona for them?
I don't know what that means. Like they have to talk in a voice and wear
No. Actually, that wouldn't be too hard to do. You just have to create an account with Google that you would like name your guest if they didn't want to use their own personal Google Hangout or whatever. I think you're getting that.
Oh, an anonymous login that they could use. I never thought about that, but I haven't had that particular concern yet. You mean like they want to not log in with their name or something?
Yeah, I think that's or they just weren't maybe they were comfortable enough to give it a shot, but they didn't know a lot about it. Maybe they're older or whatever, and we could, just have Gun Channel guest and you could use the same one for multiple people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never had that, and I've never encountered that yet, but I imagine it's a thing. Yeah, that's interesting. Never thought about that.
I know we've talked a lot about prepping over the years, and there's tons of prepping channels out there. How do I put it? I guess it'd be good to talk about gadgets versus skills. Where do the skills need to be before you concern yourself with gadgets?
Right on. You're talking specifically for gear, though?
Yeah, I mean, like, your med kit is worthless if you don't actually know how to use the contents in it.
No, that's not true, but I hear what you're saying. A med kit specifically is valuable when you have it attached to you because somebody else can have those skills. In fact, somebody else has to have those skills. If you're dead, they have to come along and, apply them to you. So
Fair
enough. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like having a fire building kit or a compass is pointless if you don't know what to do with it, because unless you're going to keep handing your stuff to somebody else,
Yep.
Well, we'll definitely be doing more on gear and stuff coming up, but I think that applies to guns too. I've just recently been listening. I think we talked about it last week. I was listening. I consumed a bunch of the Jaeger podcasts. Anybody has opinions about Lake Jaeger, I've already invited you to leave. Most of you don't know him. If you do have opinions on him, and he's a heck of a good human being, a good dude, and he plays with YouTube, and I respect that. And the people that have the most to say about Jaeger don't take his classes and have no idea of what he's actually offering people, and it's interesting. So anyway, his experience or his network, I guess, the people that he's trained with has given him a level of I don't know what to call it. Like his peers are immense. He has a lot of peers, I guess is the way to say it. So when he has people on the show, they all know a bunch of these people. So it's an insight to the training community, the people that have created firearms training, that's, I suspect, unique. So if you look at the entire spectrum of firearms training, like literally all firearms training, it didn't exist until there was firearms. And then firearms didn't change all that much until Browning. So, firearms existed and they basically sat around looking the same through freaking wars and wars and decades till Browning comes along and takes us from single shot guns to machine guns in a one generation. And then you come out of Browning's era with, coming from single action revolvers coming through to 1911s. So training, which didn't even hardly exist after the Civil War, people figured out, hey, let's start figuring out how to shoot better. I guess a little bit in the prior campaigns, but for the most part, you can trace training, especially modern firearms training. None of that is speculation or lost to the time or anything. All of that is highly documented. These people are still alive. So when you start seeing the original Weaver and Clint Smith and the people that created all of this stuff. Anyway, so Jaeger's trained with all these people that have either invented or been part of modern firearms training, or like the first generation of their students who've come out and developed and adapted and stuff. And he has such an open mind and like warrior's mindset at all this stuff. He treats it so much like a martial art that when he has conversations with them, it's not hyped. It's not to sell you anything. It's not to unnecessarily congratulate anybody. It's just, like I say, an insight into the way that they have conversations off air, I guess, or off camera. Because it is kind of off camera. Jaeger's not, he's doing it for his tactical response alumni, really. And the podcast is for anybody who can listen to it, but it's focused at these guys. So these guys are all pretty dedicated training, what we should call it, students, I guess. So anyway, really interesting stuff from like a warrior's mindset, and talking to people who are, he has unprecedented access to people that developed modern firearms training. So it's really interesting listening to those podcasts, and I'm going to be I'm just all psyched up on that stuff. So I'll probably be incorporating a bunch of those topics into the coming shows as well.
Yeah.
Training is one of those things that's so easy to just say, I know what it is and blow it off. I mean, because I've seen it. It's not like, I'm not just saying that. I've been around for a while, and millions of people, well, not millions, but at least tens of thousands of people go, I think I know what it is, and they blow it off and emulate it. But the same way that a little kid playing with trucks is emulating construction, there's such nuance and layers of intricacy to what's going on, that just miming their actions is not the same as understanding what all those people are doing when they're going through a routine or something. And people that talk about clearing stuff, and it's crazy the kind of stuff that it goes on. And it's something that I think it's just always going to be frustrating. There's always going to be people at different levels of knowledge and expertise and interest, and everyone's going to be changing. So it's just one of these things that we'll have to learn how to I don't know. Anyway. So there's a lot to it. So it's I don't want to. I'm going around in circles trying to say. It's a tough thing. There's a lot of people that'll put videos out and with the best of interests, but if they haven't experienced some of the techniques and the skills to coach, then the stuff that they're putting out is it's nothing. It's not. It's probably just short of bad advice, I guess.
Well, I think one of the things that you hit on in a chat just a couple days ago, last week, was about it's easy to think you're mimicking something physically, but there's so much going on that you can't just see from the mental side of things, and that's where having someone like Jaeger and his resources of people that he's worked with and everything else, and their pool of experiences really makes a difference.
Yeah, and just the difference between a military mindset on something and a non-military, and the difference between a police and a civilian, or a contractor and something else. So, just like medical, how often does a medical, or how often does a CCW type class include a step to I guess not diagnose, what's the word? Assess if you were wounded in a situation. A lot of times, you train for the scenarios, or you train for the actual fun stuff, the gun play, but rarely do they go beyond that too much, other than to then talk about maybe when the police show up or whatever. But I don't know, I've been to a lot of classes, and they don't all forget it, but a couple of them, well, most of them probably don't bring up anything about assessing your own medical condition. And under the stress and excitement and everything, I mean, even if I've walked past stuff at Home Depot and gashed my leg pretty bad, you just don't notice it sometimes when you injure yourself, especially under massive stress. So getting a shot, it's not unprecedented for somebody to get a gunshot and not realize it, especially one that's not immediately fatal, obviously, right? Or, like I say, whack into a cabinet or have some glass break and have a big gash that they're not aware of. And maybe it's not fatal, but sometimes it can be pretty bad. And you're just not aware of it yet. Your tunnel vision hasn't opened up to tell you you're in massive pain.
Yeah, your body does an adrenaline dump. You lose a lot of that sense.
And just something like that, if you never incorporate that into your drills or your scenario stuff, then you don't know that you're not doing that, and you don't need to do that every time. But on the other hand, military guys are never going to forget that. They're in a whole different situation. They're in a situation where if they're not taking that into account, they're dead. There's not an ambulance 3 minutes away or whatever, a phone call away. So, it's just different angles, different mindsets, different perspectives coming at it. And anyway, so there's a lot to it, and I'll be probably talking about some of that, just like I say, because I've been digging into those podcasts, and it's just neat to listen to these guys, like I say, from that vantage point of fly on the wall, listen to this conversation between peers that are at that level, chatting about stuff that's sometimes pretty awesome, and then other times just kind of trivial, fun stuff. But it puts it all into perspective. These are just regular human beings. It's just that their areas of expertise happens to be gunfighting.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit on something really good in what you just said about, a lot of classes talk about the incident itself, and then what happens when the police arrive. I can tell people out there that, I don't care if it's a 5-minute response time or a 20-minute response time to when police arrive. That time period between your shoot and police arriving can feel like an eternity if you don't know how to walk yourself through the psychological side of things, much less the physical side.
And if you've never even considered that time, right? If for example, I've been to classes that are CCW classes, and I've been to bad CCW classes. I've been to CCW classes that were in the middle, and then I've been to CCW classes that were borderline, like you could almost call it like a tactics class or like a, defensive pistol type of class or something. But then I've taken something like Front Sight where there's lectures and stuff, and they take it to a whole nother level, like Masada Ayub with the lectures and the range time.
Oh, yeah.
A whole nother level of perspective and scope. So, and it's all about time, and it's all about instructor knowledge, I guess, but also curriculum. If you're taking $100 class, don't expect to get everything. You're going to get some slice of the pie or maybe an overall perspective, but you're not going to get an in-depth look at each slice of the pie. So some of the larger classes that take like 4 days will take a look at the whole pie and then start digging into the slices of pie, hours at a time. And when we're talking about a fast class where they just have time to get some, hours worth of stuff into you, they're not going to necessarily bring up all those different possibilities, including medical, but that time between, like you say, the actual lethal force incident and the time that the law enforcement arrives.
Yep.
Front Sight has an awesome presentation on that. I don't know if it changes over time or not, and I haven't taken their stuff in a long time, but it was awesome because at that time I was still new to everything and experiencing the variety of perspective and scope that everybody was bringing to it as far as instructors and curriculums. And Front Sight is a big giant place right out where you're at. I'm sure. Have you ever been there?
Yeah, I actually have a lifetime membership. I just hardly ever go because of the fact that
you're right there, of course.
Yeah.
But so you understand, it's like really, really, really nice. I would say, well, I can't say that good. I mean, it's still impressive. It's probably better than any range most people have been to.
And
there are better ranges in the country, but I mean, it's top 10 for sure. Maybe top 5, but top 10 for sure.
Especially after they did their expansion.
Well, yeah, but still, it's in the middle of nowhere. That's going to knock at some points, and it's Front Sight that knocks at some points. But it's the facilities are impressive.
The facilities are very nice.
Dang, what was I getting at? What was I saying? How impressive their facilities are. Because I was saying that when you take a 4-day defensive handgun class there, they've got a whole catalog of classes. And if you become a life member, you can just start taking classes anytime you feel like getting there. So the 4-day class is sort of their introduction. There might be something more basic if you really want to ease your way in, but that's probably where most people are going to start. And it's 4 days. And they basically copied the curriculum off of Gunsight. So they had an established, working curriculum, and then did the, I don't know what they call like the technique. Well, Woods is in here, maybe where you do stuff for 2 hours and then you sit and do lecture for 2 hours. Then you go back on the range and do stuff for 2 hours. Then you sit in the lecture for lunch, and then you go back and you do stuff for 2 hours. Then you're back in the lecture for 2 hours. Is there a name for that sort of cycle?
Yeah, I'm not aware of it. I'm sorry.
But anyway, that technique, I've been to other places where they just do the whole range or the whole class out on the range. I really haven't been to one where it's all classroom. But anyway, there's different methods of, getting lecture and class into the same things. I guess I've been to classes where lecture 1 day or 2 days even, and then 2 days on the range kind of thing. But they are there and they have their facility to where they can do it that way. Anyway, what I'm getting at is you take these lectures and they're in this giant metal building with giant TV screens, like auditorium almost, except it's a metal building. And and they have these lectures, and one of their lectures was what I was actually getting at, which was the whole what to expect when the police arrive. And the way that they broke it down, I'm going to try to remember it after almost 10 years, but when you've got different types of police officers and they're human beings, right? And they've all been on the clock for a different amount of time. When you talk about the kind of calls that a police officer is going to get, around town or whatever, a gun incident is a type of call that's unique to, cat in a tree or a, donut shop on fire or whatever other kind of call they might get, right? So you got to think about what kind of cop is the first to show up to a gun incident. And that's probably going to be your cops that want to be the first to show up at a gun incident, right? Not your sergeants who have seen it all and are experienced, and they're going to get there eventually, but they're going to let their hot to trot cops who want to get to be the first one at a gun incident get there first, right? Yep. Your SWAT cops, you're up and coming, whatever. And I haven't been to a class before that ever took it to that level, and I was like, wow, so that's the kind of thing when if you haven't experienced that kind of thing, how do you explain to somebody how a 4-day class is going to be when it's little pieces like that every couple hours dropped on you? Like, if you're not taking good notes, you don't even remember all the cool little things that come up and make you rethink, like, okay, so when people are having discussions about what it's going to be like when the police show up, let's talk about realistically what it's going to be like when the police show up. Like, you're going to potentially have cops coming from 6 different directions, all shouting, conflicting orders at you. Like, good luck trying to scenario that or, play that out ahead of time. Like, you just got to be ready for all that. So that's where I think we started this whole thing where, if you've been to a competent or thorough enough instruction and training, then you have at least had the experience. You've been told about some stuff that you won't be experiencing things for the first time. So just knowing that little kernel that about the police and how they're going to show up, if anything ever were to happen, you just have that little bit more knowledge, that little bit extra insight to the whole thing, just because you've heard about it before. And that's that kind of stuff that it's tough to explain how awesome training can be when, sometimes it's as subtle as that kind of thing.
Yeah. Here's an interesting one. Training for the family would be an interesting topic. Like, at what point do you start taking your kids to training, if that's something you wanted to do?
Well, I'm not selling Gun Sight, but yeah, they definitely have a class for the whole family.
Well, I know those services are out there. My point is that I'd be curious because I don't have any kids of my own. I just have an army of nieces and nephews. But I think it'd be interesting to hear from some of the parents out there. At what age would they think about taking their kids into that?
I remember when I was first told, like, there's the shotgun. If you need it, use it, but don't screw around with it otherwise. I just don't remember what year of school I was in, but I remember getting told that and knowing, like, okay, I just graduated to the level of I got to take out bad guys if, grandma's in here and it's just me and grandma. I'm protecting grandma now. I'm not, I've been taken off the leash. Like, I'm allowed to touch a gun if I have to, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like training. That's just like kind of like going over gun safety with your kids at home. But I mean, like, at what point do you think, okay, I'm going to take my son to a gun sights class or to a front sight class, something like that?
Well, that's the kind of thing that I think is interesting, because it existed, but it would have been in the first 10 years of firearms training. Like, the first firearms training class was school was Gun Sight, right? So we know in 1971 or whatever when the first training school happened. So before that, there just was none, and except for military and police or whatever. So it took a little while before it was even a thing, and it was more than just competitive shooters, shooting or learning how to improve their skills type of thing. And it was like, became an actual, what do you call that? Like discipline, I guess, of like combat shooting. So I don't know if I would have ever been able to do it, but nowadays there's no excuse. I mean, not only, like you say, there's multiple instructors offering instruction for the family. And I'm going to plug Jaeger's thing. He's got a deal going where you or an adult and a kid under 18 take the class together. And, that sounds perfect for a mom and her daughter, or a kid and a parent and their kid, or whatever, or a parent and an uncle and a kid or something.
Yep.
But, like I say, Front Sight has them. I'm sure other places, I'm sure Gun Sight has them. So, that's something that nowadays people have it. There's got to be reviews out there from both kids and adults' perspective on it, and probably some live chats, right? So nowadays it's something that you don't even have to wonder what the experience is like. I'm sure there's some amount of info out there. And I don't know, as far as the age, I would say it's the kind of thing that back in the day you would have just had to guess, I suppose, kids' level of maturity. But nowadays you've got people who have done it already, been there and done that. You can not only read what they've done or watch what they've done, but then also probably contact them and ask a couple of questions. My kid is great, but every once in a while, you can't pull you can't shoot a 9mm. Like, should I do that?
Yeah, like I said, I think that'd be really interesting, because we have lots of parents over on gun channels. It'd be nice to hear, some of their thoughts on when they either decided to do this themselves, or, at how old they think they would start. I think that'd be really cool.
I'm always stuck on weighing the costs of some of the really good ones, because, I've got to try to convince the wife to spend $2,000 on something like that. I think that would be interesting to figure out, what the pros and cons are for people, because I'm certainly not alone on that.
$2,000. What are you talking about? $2,000.
Well, the one that you just talked about for the 4-day defensive handgun cost $2,000.
Oh, at Front Sight?
Yeah.
All right, here's Front Sight's thing. They're crazy, and they are weird. So I'm not even going to get into the craziest and weirdest stuff. That's a whole nother discussion. But their marketing, I'm just going to say it's unique, to be polite, because they're not bad people, I don't think, but their marketing is unique and odd. So, yeah, those retail prices are there for the bait and switch, or I don't know what that's called. It's not really bait and switch, for like the big discount thing. Anyway, here's the long story short. You never have to pay for a class at Front Sight. I have a stack of certificates from working with them in the past, so I can send people there for a long, long time for nothing. But Dog, how much was your lifetime membership?
I can't disclose that on air.
So it was not that much?
Let's just say I got a heck of a deal. Yeah.
So the deal is with Front Sight, it's not a pyramid scheme, because I don't believe it is, but it is the kind of thing where it's like timeshares. Like, there's only 100 rooms in the hotel, but you can sell 1 million rooms timeshares, because only 1,000 people or 100 people are going to show up at a time. Front Sight has a whole bunch of memberships.
Yeah,
and people don't all show up at the same time, so they can have a whole bunch of memberships. And anyway, whatever they're posting as a retail price, you're not going to pay anywhere near that. Once you dig in and find somebody who's a member or whatever, you can get there way cheaper.
And I'll tell you this, that if you get your CCW through them, there's all kinds of connections and stuff. And the likelihood you're never going to pay retail if you actually get your CCW through them.
No, they just put retail there to, I don't know, for tax reasons or to make it look like a big deal. But
so it sounds like a good topic might be reasonable costs for, gun classes. What is too much and what is not enough? Because I don't know anything about any of it.
It's almost always like 100 to 200 a day. So somewhere around there.
I find that the biggest thing you're going to pay for classes is your travel is going to cost you more than the class, usually.
Travel and ammo for sure, yeah. Because you're only paying a nominal fee to the instructor, and what you're gaining, and a lot of times, especially if you appreciate the instructors you're going to, you're paying for time, a slice of the time of their life. So Clint Smith, for crying out loud, you're going to spend a few days with Clint Smith. Like, that's not fan worship. That's legitimate Second Amendment history. Spending time with Massad Ayoob is amazing. It is not just like, oh, I seen Brad Pitt. Screw that. Like, it is not that. it's like being able to hang out with Washington or Jefferson or something. Like these guys freaking invented sports like IDPA and shit, or IPSC or whatever it is. You know, they created schools, they created curriculum, they created methods that then people, you know, they created framework that people developed what we got today. They saved so many lives, it's crazy. So these guys are, you know, authors since we've been around. So I guess in that respect, they're celebrity, but you know, authors of like how to, you know, what it's like being an expert witness in all these hundreds of court cases, or like, you know, what, you know, after studying wound ballistics or whatever, here's what really works or something. Like these are that kind of authors. So anyway, being able to say that you trained with some of these guys is just neat. I mean, it's just like, you know, saying you flew with an astronaut or something. You're paying for you know, some time out of their whatever, you know, time.
For those of you who aren't really into gun history, just to put what G's saying into some perspective for you, it would be like getting to sit down with Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee, you know, and talk to them about martial arts and fighting, or, you know, being able to talk to, pick your sport, somebody like John Madden about football. You're learning from those kind of historically great people throughout the industry. I think that's what you were getting at, G.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just neat. So you'd be able to say, yeah, like, you know, get a pilot, take a pilot's class, or take a pilot's class with Scott Glenn or something.
All right.
Well, so with that, we will feature a gun shop today. I'm just going to go over to Instagram and see what the last one I featured over there. I haven't featured anybody new, but I did feature the buttons. So let's go look at these buttons. So P226 Nut is this one dude that lives in Tulsa. He can't figure out if he's a knife maker, or if he's a gun collector, or what's going on. He's transitioning. But aside from his lifestyle, he has been attending gun shows, specifically that Wanamaker gun show, for a long time, since he's a little kid. So he started collecting these, or acquiring these, accumulating, I guess is the word, these badges. It doesn't sound like he was much of a collector, but since he's been going all the time, he just started throwing these things in a drawer or something. And knowing that I'm crazy for gun shows in general and digging that show, he gave me his collection of them. So I got all these in the van, and this is on the counter at the hotel there that year. I guess that was earlier this year, or was that? Yeah, that was earlier this year. This was just when he gave them to me. We stuck them all down on the counter there, and we're kind of going through them and putting them in order chronologically, and took a couple of pictures of them in a big, you know, just sprawled out like this. So anyway, just a reminder to let people know that the show is coming up. It is the biggest gun show of the year, or the biggest gun show in the United States. It happens twice a year in Tulsa, and got probably 10 or more people from gun channels this year heading over there. So look forward to some live stuff happening at the show. Plenty of reviews and stuff happening after. The gun channel's content creators get media passes. They work with the show, and they use this as a bit of training wheels when they're first, you know, getting their teeth cut and doing booth reviews and chatting with people as far as holding a camera and offering some coverage. And then you know, a couple of them, like Clover and Ghost, have been going like 3 or 4 times now, so they're going to be getting old hat with it, and hopefully digging in and getting a little bit more you know, layers of interest, you know, layers of covering the show. Anyway, so stay tuned to all of that. Gun Gals will be there, a couple of them. Well, yeah, a couple of them, and you know, taking it from a gal's point of view, which is always cool. And again, they're newer to the whole walking around with a camera type of thing. I personally find it interesting to see people develop that way, and we can all learn from, you know, their experiences, and hopefully all offer them some, you know, mansplaining. They're chicks, for crying out loud. They don't know what they're doing. So you know, so we got gun channels for, so we can mansplain to all these girls. Anyway, that's the Wanamaker show. Wanamaker show. If you haven't been to it, I'd say check it out sometime. It's in a way better than SHOT Show. If you're a content creator, I'd say SHOT Show is better, just because you're going to be able to network and it's an industry thing, and it's cool to be able to go to it. But if you're just a regular, you're not looking at filming anything, you just want to experience something awesome as far as firearms. It's a cool gun show. You guys, neither one of you have been to it, huh?
No, I have sadly not had the opportunity to make it to Wanamaker.
I'm trying to think of any in Vegas that are that big. There's really not.
No, SHOT Show is really the only really big thing we get in terms of that out here.
Well, you get some big gun shows, but they're in like I guess the one's at Convention Center, but it's not that big. And then
It's not compared to Wanamaker now.
well, you got that antique show that happens right with the SHOT Show. And
Yeah.
if they put that into like a convention center, it could be a chunk of Wanamaker. It could definitely be one of the largest gun shows in the country, but they divide it up into at least 3 or 4 rooms over there in the, what was the name of that one? I guess now it's in the, well, it used to be the Hilton, the Elvis Hilton. I don't know what it's called now. Wynn or something.
Yeah, the Wynn Hotel.
But their convention center is crappy. It's little and it's like chopped into 4 or 5 rooms instead of one big room. They just they built it over the series of years, so it's not one big room. Anyway, that would be a fun show to see in one big room. You been to that show before?
No, sadly, when SHOT Show rolled around since I moved here, I've been out of the state when it comes through.
Not SHOT Show, the antique Vegas.
Yeah, and the antique show happens like the weekend after, and
Yeah.
I've been gone each year. So
That
I'm
one
hoping
is
to make it
supposedly the longest running show in Vegas or in Nevada, and that's pretty neat. But it's antique guns exclusively, so there's no beef jerky or anything like that. It's just antique guns, which is neat because it's everything from old engraved weird stuff to maybe the beginning of like the Civil War or something. But then it's not much. There's hardly any World War I or II. It's really pre-World War I and stuff. So it's just a unique gun show that way, but it's also huge. It's like an entire big gun show, but just that old stuff. And it's just neat to walk around because most of them are just got the stuff on their table. They're trading and collecting. It's a bunch of old timers. And anyway, that part's really neat. And then it's a custom knife and knife maker show is the other half of it, I'd say. And that part's just neat. I mean, seeing all the knife materials and the knives themselves and the fanciness of the engraving and whatever is all super neat. But like I say, it's in 4 big rooms or something. So by the time you wander through it all, it just seems like a lot of wandering, where it'd be kind of neat to see all that in one giant room. Like I say, it wouldn't be as big as half a Wanamaker altogether, but it would be a fairly impressive gun show. So I guess that was not really a gun shop of the day, but every once in a while we talk about gun shows too. Let's see if anybody's saying anything out here. Pink is talking about it. I want to go there and finally do a Jaeger class. Live closer than Dano. Yeah, Dano's been to a few classes now. I went to Front Sight first, then Jaeger, but I would not recommend it in that order. Front Sight is okay. I mean, it's good, but it is it's USA Today compared to like talking to a college professor. It's boiled down, plain vanilla, low salt, gluten-free version of training. It's good, and it's got a lot of good stuff in it, but it's pretty training wheels. How many of the classes have you taken over there?
I've done, let's see here. I did 2 by myself and 1 with the wife.
Handguns all the time?
Yeah. I've been meaning to go back since now the rifle range is open again, so that we can do that. but I haven't had a chance where me and the wife's schedule have met up so I can take us both. They're not the most, they're not as detailed from what I understand of like Jaeger's classes, but they're definitely
Jaeger's is different. Jaeger's is like Jeet Kune Do, and they are like going to ninja school. Like they do neat stuff at Front Sight, but it's not fast.
You do fun stuff in the classes, and it's, in my opinion, they focus a lot on the mechanical side of things, I guess would be the way I'd put it. It's a lot of step 1, step 2, step 3.
Right. Well, that's all from Cooper.
Yeah, that's pretty much all the classes have been like with them. But it's good to do.
Jaeger's is all about mindset, tactics, skills, mindset. So, skills, gear. So, mindset, tactics, skills, gear in that order. So, Jaeger's class is being a gunfighter, and then knowing that you're the weapon, and then your tactics and your tools are insignificant. And because they're insignificant, he's more of like the Book of the Five Rings, or is he? I think it's Book of the Five Rings, where the warrior does not have a favorite weapon. So people can't deal with that sometimes and freak out. He'll drop his gun intentionally for reasons, and people can't deal with that. Front Sight, you drop your gun too. It's just that people don't, have a problem with Front Sight. Anyway, Front Sight is massively complete. I mean, it's a lot of good stuff. It's just that the way that they package it is very it's like getting a lot of good stuff from like a 1960s stewardess. Like it's all packaged kind of oddly. So the experience itself is kind of interesting, and I don't want to say it's bad. It's not good, but it's not bad.
It's just
interesting. It's different, yeah. And it's not bad. It's just that it's so fucking different that it's sterile. It's sort of, they're definitely designed for like a lot of people. But dude, you're gonna do 360 shoot houses. You're gonna get experience going through an actual like Hogan's Alley type of shoot house.
Those shoot houses are incredible.
It's insane. And you're going to do room entries and doors breaching and stuff, which not breaching like with explosives, but like actually not just cutting the pie, but like having a little hands-on experience, which is in the context of like, this is not something that we're recommending, but here's at least what you can do if you have to at night or something. And then, the potential of going down like the canyons and the 1 mile shot, from the sniper hill. There's, it's an amazing amount of stuff. There's there's 4 360 shoot houses from more classes. There's an entire class of Uzis, like 35 people with full auto Uzis. You can take that class. Like there's just amazing classes, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's like I say, it just reminds me of like going to an airport in the 60s. Like it's
like I said,
a weird experience.
That's why I said it's very mechanical. It's very much here are the steps, do the steps. If you're looking for the whole, psychological walkthrough, you want to go to something closer to yours.
But Front Sight, man, they did not hold any punches. I seriously had to contemplate the responsibility of carrying a firearm after a couple of their lectures. Like they do not hold any punches. They take you right to the line and go, this is what you're talking about.
Yep.
There's some gruesome stuff, and that is respectable. I definitely give them 100% kudos for that. That's not like all just the thrill, it's not,
they're not gonna hide anything from you by any means. I don't want to give that impression. They're gonna tell you, as they walk you through the steps, they're gonna show you every step, and including the parts that you don't want to think about.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, it's good stuff, but it's just, then you got to be a member. So that's the other part. You don't have to be, I guess, but it's kind of like going to a timeshare. Like they are going to let you know that there's a membership thing, and that's how it works, and what their plans are and stuff. So that some people get turned off by that, but if they're turned off by that, then they're not experiencing the facilities there. The facilities are amazing.
I mean, the one thing I will say, if you are going to come to Front Sight, and I encourage you, if it's the training that's available to you, take it. Call ahead. Know what classes are going to be available the day that you come. And I personally, my advice to you is don't come during tourist season, because they do very big groups. that come in. The companies will actually send people there. So it's come during the off season.
Yeah, but the off season is when it's 1,000 degrees there.
Hotels are cheaper.
Yeah, we went there. I forget what time of year, but it was. I mean, we're from Tucson, so we're used to it. But I imagine it was uncomfortable for some people. But it was not warm. I mean, it was not cool. It was warm.
Yeah, definitely.
But whatever. It's the desert. What are you gonna do? So I guess we would kind of narrowcast into pink there, but whatever. Thanks for chatting out there. So that's the show. We'll be back tomorrow with more gun chat. And thanks, guys, for jumping in. Thanks, everybody that's been watching the show. And